maybe the biggest competitor to Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons & Dragons, has finally stepped into this whole open gaming license controversy that seems like it's been going on for, at this point, forever. Paizo has announced on their blog that they'll be stepping away from the OGL, and they're working on something called ORC, the Open RPG Creative License. This will be irrevocable. While they may not have it in their most immediate next releases that have already kind of shipped off and printing, this will appear pretty soon, but they're working on finishing it still, even though they've made this announcement. And one of the key points of this post is that they're not going this alone. They're trying to cooperate with tons of other companies. They've supposedly signed on Kobold Press, Chaosium, Green Ronin, Legendary Games, and Rogue Genius Games, and they're trying to grow that list so that everyone is, cooperating, a unified front that is in this together. That's huge. It's worth mentioning that Kobold Press is working on something called Project Black Flag. That is an open, subscription-free rule set that they're creating. I once thought that one of the greatest values that Dungeons & Dragons had is that it got people into this hobby. Maybe they stay with it, maybe they do it for a while and try something else and stick with that, or try a bunch of different things. But most people that play this type of game, that was their entry point. And I always thought of it as like a rising tide raises all boats kind of situation, where the more people we get playing D&D, the more people you can get playing these other games, because it can sometimes be hard to get people to play or want to play these other games that they haven't heard of or things like that. But I don't think it seems like Wizards of the Coast's business model is going to support that. I mean, we've seen the Kotaku report now that the D&D CEO thinks that the brand is under-monetized. And I just think that's such a gross misunderstanding of tabletop RPGs and what they are at their core. Yes, it's a brand. You can monetize stuff, and I think it's okay to make money. I mean, there are things that you can do, maps, minis, whatever. But at the core of all of this is our imaginations as GMs, as players. It is a creative, collaborative entity, and we don't need a single brand or a single entity to make everything. In fact, because it's so imaginative and because that's the beauty of that, we actually want to pull ideas from all kinds of places. And if you're Paizo, if you're Kobold Press, these actions make a ton of sense, right? You have tons of people that are suddenly boycotting D&D, and it can be hard to get people to leave D&D and want to try something else. There's a barrier to entry. You have to buy more stuff, perhaps. You have to read rules and learn rules and get to know them, and you're stepping out of that familiarity. But you now have a bunch of people who are suddenly ready to do that who may not have been in the past. And will some of these boycotts be enough to actually hurt Dungeons & Dragons or get them to rethink what they are possibly going to put out there? I'm pessimistic about it. I don't know that it will have a substantial long-term impact on their bottom line. But the exciting thing is that we have tons of people who are ready to look into other systems, try different stuff right now in this moment. One of the reasons I called this channel the Essential Game Master and not the Essential Dungeon Master is because I never wanted to only talk about D&D. My main goal has been helping people get into this hobby that when I started seemed really intimidating, and just help people get into it, however that is. And oftentimes the easiest path, the path of the most resources, has been Dungeons & Dragons. And I've spent anywhere from a few sessions to years playing different systems, and they can be amazing. And I think it's a good time to start taking a deeper look at some of these other systems that are out there. And look, if you're like me, it's getting a little exhausting continually hearing this sort of doom and gloom about this OGL stuff, but there is a positive thing out there. No matter what happens with this, and at the time that I'm recording this, we don't know what'll happen, all of these other systems exist. And many of them are absolutely delightful. Going forward, I really want to start to dedicate some time to looking into other systems, both ones I have experience with and ones I don't yet, looking into them and seeing what it's like as a new player. If there's anything that's really solidified in my mind with all this swirling OGL controversy, it's that D&D doesn't have to be anyone's entry point into this hobby. And if it is, that's okay. But if you don't ever try another system or another type of game, regardless of what Wizards does in the long run here, I think you're doing yourself a disservice, because there are amazing games out there. So let's take a look at them soon.